a special treat today because it is Mother's Day. I actually did the smartest thing I could have done, and I actually asked my wife to come and preach today because I was like, hey, it's Mother's Day. You would love to preach, right? So Michelle's going to come up in just a second, but before she comes up, I just want to acknowledge today that Mother's Day is a special day for remembering all the women in our lives, the ones who have gone before us, the ones who have passed on faith to us. I think about my grandmother, my grandma Nita, and how she passed on faith to my mom, and how my mom Janelle passed on faith to me. And I look at my sister, just these amazing women in my life that I get to just be so grateful for and have learned from. And all of us have those people in our lives. And so I know there are some for you, but we also acknowledge that Mother's Day can be a pain point for us too, where we've lost women who have given us so much, or we have women in our lives that we wish they gave us, what we would want from them, but they haven't or they can't in some way. And so there's kind of the gamut today. And so I just want you to know that we're with you in all of those things. And today, hopefully, as we celebrate those women in our lives, we can also acknowledge, there are things that we still miss and ache for and long for. But today I am excited because Michelle, as she comes and speaks, is one of those mothers in my life that I admire more than pretty much actually anyone else in my life. If you've met Michelle, you know that she is 100% herself all of the time. She brings clarity and kindness and encouragement. As Arthur said, she frolics, and it's actually true. I've seen it. You don't have to frolic now, but she does. She frolics. And today I'm just excited because you are the best, and I love you, and happy Mother's Day. And you got this. Okay, can you guys give Michelle a big round of applause?
And happy day to celebrate you amazing women. So it's so good to be together today, and I'm just thrilled to dig into God's word together. Um, I have a bit of a confession to make. I think Jonathan has shared this before, but I'm going to share it again because I want to see if I have anybody with me in this. I feel kind of alone. I read the ends of books before I start a book. Is anybody with me in this? Does anybody like to know the ending? Oh my gosh, of course you do. You're so wonderful. Thank you. Exactly. Okay, exactly. This is like that's the whole sermon here. Yes. So I love reading the ends of stories before I start a book. I need to know. I need to be prepared. Like if it's not good or if it's too sad or too dark, I'm not sure I want to go into it. And TV has made it kind of complicated now, or actually kind of wonderful for me because I can start a show and I can go right to the end and say, I'm not sure. Do you do that? Thank you. I literally did it last night. No, you gotta know. You gotta know. You gotta be prepared. So that's me. This is kind of me in a nutshell. I like to be prepared. I know it's kind of crazy. I just like to know. I like to know that things are going to be okay. I like things that are predictable and so on. And we have our son, our oldest son, Henry. He loves to read. We took him to the library just a couple months ago. He got this huge book, and he was in the car and he was reading it. And I saw that he was in the back section of the book, and I thought that's kind of weird. Like, Henry, you just got this book, and he says, "Oh, I like to read the ending before." And I said, "Oh, I've created a monster. Like I did that. I did that. I didn't teach him, but it's in his little heart." So Henry and I, and maybe a few of you, we like to be prepared. We like to know the ending of things before they start. And that's just not how life is, right? This is just not how life goes. We face challenges, we face unknowns, we face uncertainties, and it can be really challenging. Nothing is promised, and yet God has called us to have faith, right? So I've known Jesus since I was in elementary school. I came to faith when I was young, and there have been countless times when God has shown up miraculously. He doesn't always show up in the way that I expected or even the way I wanted, but he's been so good and so faithful in my life. And even still, despite knowing God for many, many years, I still like to plan things. I still like to think if I just organize my life in such a way, it'll be better. Or I think I have the right plans, or my sense of control will just make it better. And it's just not true. And so I wanted to share that today, and I wondered if you maybe could relate to that in some way. Something that helps me as I go through life, through these challenges, through my ups and downs. I love to remember people throughout history and people throughout Scripture who have lived these wild adventures with God, and they didn't know the ends of their stories. And so we're going to dig into one of those stories today through the life of Moses. And the people surrounding him. So if you have your Bibles, you can open it to the book of Exodus. This is the second book of your Bible. We're going to be looking at the midwives and Pharaoh, and then we're going to be looking at Moses and his birth and his mother, Jochebed. So let's look into that today. I've been studying this passage for weeks now, And I am just floored at the fact that God uses normal people to do miraculous things. And this story may be familiar to you. You might have watched the Prince of Egypt Disney movie, or you might know it, but I just wonder what God has for us today, like something new. So let's pray and ask Him again to reveal something new in this narrative today. God, we thank you so much that your mercies are new every day, every morning, and that you are with us now. Thank you that your word comes alive because that's who you are. And we trust, God, that you are in this time and in this service. We ask, Lord, that you would reveal yourself in a new way as we read your word today, God. Thank you for it. In your name we pray. Amen. Okay, friends, so we're going to read Exodus 1. We're going to jump into verse 6. It says, Joseph and all his brothers and all that generation died, but the Israelites were exceedingly fruitful. They multiplied greatly, increasing in number, and became so numerous that the land was filled with them. Then a new king, to whom Joseph meant nothing, came to power in Egypt. Look, he said to his people, the Israelites have become far too numerous for us. Come, we must deal shrewdly with them, or they will become even more numerous, and if war breaks out, we'll join our enemies, fight against us, and leave the country. So there's two pieces in here that I wanted to pull out. It says in verse 6, it says, now Joseph and his brothers and that generation died. And it said in verse 8, it brings it up again. It says, the new king whom Joseph meant nothing. So for context here, Joseph, this is at the very beginning of Exodus, and as you look at Genesis, the very end of Exodus, it's about Joseph's life. And Joseph's my favorite character in the whole Bible. I just think the story of Joseph is unreal, so I hope you go back and read it. But as you look at Genesis 50, this is the end of Joseph's life. And if you remember what happened to Joseph, it's pretty unbelievable. He's one of 12 brothers. He was loved, super loved by his dad, Jacob, right? But his brothers didn't like that, and they were so jealous. He was imprisoned. He was nearly killed. He was sent to die, and yet God used him miraculously. They rose him to power, and Joseph saved his family. The end of the passage, I just love this verse. It says, you intended to harm me, but God intended it for good, to accomplish what is now being done in the saving of many lives. This is Genesis 50, verse 20. Wow, like this is incredible news. Like if I remembered that every day or every moment of the day, I think we'd live our lives a little differently, don't you think? So this story, I think about my own burdens, and I look out into this group, and I know that you all face all sorts of difficult things every day, and you are facing difficult things today. I wonder, like, could God be using these things for good? Could he be using those things, like, for the saving of many lives? Like, it's kind of wild to think about. This is not a one-off line in Scripture, right? This isn't just, like, put here flippantly. Like, I think it was really there intentionally, and it sets a pattern, not just in Joseph's life, but in Moses' life and throughout all of Scripture and all of history. God does this over and over again. He has good plans for his people, and he provides mightily to those who trust him. And so we're going to dig into a little deeper into Exodus today. This is chapter 1, verse 15. It says, the king of Egypt said to the Hebrew midwives, whose names are Shiphrah and Puah, when you are helping the Hebrew women during childbirth on the delivery stool, if you see that the baby is a boy, kill him. But if it is a girl, let her live. The midwives, however, feared God and did not do what the king of Egypt had told them to do. They let the boys live. And the king of Egypt summoned the midwives and asked them, why have you done this? Why have you let the boys live? The midwives answered Pharaoh, Hebrew women are not like Egyptian women. They are vigorous and give birth before the midwives arrive. So God was kind to the midwives, and the people increased and became even more numerous. And because the midwives feared God, he gave them families of their own. Then Pharaoh gave this order to all his people. If every Hebrew boy that is born you must throw into the Nile, but let every girl live. This is a wild story. This is a little dark for Mother's Day. But I wanted to just think about these women, Shiphrah and Puah, the midwives. They were given an impossible task. These are women who were tasked with bringing life to the world, and then they were told to end life, which just feels impossible to me. They were given an order from an extremely powerful leader, and they defied it. They trusted God, and he gave them favor. It says that the midwives feared God, and he was kind to them, so kind that he gave them families of their own. It says that these women, as we think about like context for fearing God in Scripture, this means that they had a deep reverence, a deep respect, a deep awe, like recognizing God's power, his holiness, and authority. And some of the greatest heroes in all of Scripture are said to have feared God. We'll discuss some of these later, but one of them being Joseph, one of them being Abraham, and then, of course, Moses. These women, they chose to please God. They didn't choose to please man, and they did this so courageously. These women are an example of how to walk in faith, but we see a totally contrary example in this story, right, in the life of Pharaoh. So let's dig into that. I was thinking about Pharaoh. Can you imagine being Pharaoh? Can you imagine having all the power and prestige that an Egyptian ruler would have had at that time? They were the heads of state. They were the religious rulers over the people. They were considered the divine intermediaries between the gods and their people. They created the laws. They started wars. They owned all the land. They taxed people. Like, you couldn't get more powerful than Pharaoh, right? And yet, Pharaoh, with all of his power, he was filled with fear. He took his power and he made this horrendous decree to protect his position. And Sifra and Puah, who on the contrary, they had no power, they had no standing in the world, and yet they dangerously disobeyed the rules and stuck with their convictions and defied this order. So in this story, we see that Pharaoh, he operates out of fear of man. In Sifra and Puah, on the contrast, they operate out of fear of God or faith. So faith over fear. When I read this narrative, I see these two totally different ways of living, faith over fear. And unfortunately, as I confessed at the beginning, I live out of fear a lot. I don't know about you, but I often relate to Pharaoh and his desire to control and to protect, his desire to know the future, and I don't want to live like that. So I have a billion stories, honestly, of how I choose fear over faith every day, because I'm a bit of a fearful gal. But I wanted to share one story of faith because it's relevant to this group, and it's the story of Jonathan and I ending up here at Friends Church Anaheim. So Jonathan and I have been a part of Friends Churches for 18 years, and we helped plant Friends Church Orne in 2013. It was the year our son Henry was born. And it was awesome. It was a wild time, but this church, it started, we were renting a building, we were doing a night service. It was a small church. We weren't sure if it was going to make it, but it has grown. It's grown tremendously. There's 4 services now. It's just a booming church, and it's super well integrated into the city of Orange. It's like if they left, Orange would be devastated. It's amazing how God's using it there. So we were having a wonderful time, and I remember Jonathan coming home from work in one season, and he said, "Yeah, I think that God's calling us to more." And I said, "Well, that's silly. Like we have a good thing going here. Like what are you talking about?" And he was like, "No, I think God's calling us to more." And I said, "Okay." And so he soon after that had a meeting with our executive pastor, and I knew this meeting was happening, and he called me, and I'll never forget like this moment. I was sitting at my desk at work, and he called and he said, "Michelle, I had this conversation with Bart, and he wants me to consider being a lead pastor at this church, the Waymaker Church, which is now Friends Church Anaheim." And natural Michelle, in all transparency, would have said something like, "Oh my gosh, like congratulations on being thought of. Like that's so nice of him. Like that's amazing that he thinks so highly of you. We're doing well. Like we've got a good thing. We're happy here. Like why would we ever?" But in that moment, it was a moment of faith, and I think God had just given Jonathan and I both like this immense peace in that season that we knew we had to go forward with this. And so I said something like, "Oh, that's interesting," and he went on to pursue it, and honestly, friends, like we've never looked back. Like I think about that story all the time because it has changed our whole life. Week in and week out, I'm so beyond thankful that God called us in faith over fear. Like as I think about what we would have been missing out on had we stayed in what was comfortable, like that would be a tragedy to me that we would have missed out on that. So I'm so thankful. And as we face fearful things and hard things every day, I want to remember that. I want to live in faith over fear and get out of what is comfortable or predictable because God might have something better. So that's a quick story for you. Ooh, sorry, Jonathan, you don't cry on stage. It's hard to do that. You should try. It's hard. Okay. All right. Each day, we're presented with tasks that are big and small, like grand opportunities, big opportunities and small opportunities to have faith over fear. And it, like when we live in fear, it leads us to double down on control, right? So versus living in faith, it leads us to freedom and faith. When we live in faith over fear, we're trusting God and not ourselves. And He is so worthy to be trusted. Yeah, so how do we do this, you may ask? We're going to get into this throughout the whole message, but just a quick heads up on this. We do this through remembering who God is and through releasing the things that hold us back from Him. We need to remember the example of people like Sifra and Pua, who made the bravest choice, the most dangerous choice, really, and one that would change the course of history. These women, they had a heavenly perspective in their day-to-day, and that is really the only perspective worth having in this life. Let's get back to this passage, though. I want to get back to Moses. This is really the impossible situation that he was born into. These families were enduring slavery and hardship, and let's see what it says in Exodus 2 at the start of that chapter. Now a man of the tribe of Levi married a Levite woman, and she became pregnant and gave birth to a son. When she saw he was a fine child, she hid him for 3 months. But when she could hide him no longer, she got a papyrus basket for him, coated it with tar and pitch. Then she placed the child in it and put it among the reeds and along the bank of the Nile. His sister stood at a distance to see what would happen to him. Jehoshaphat, who's the mother of the story, she cleverly put Moses in this basket in a place where an Egyptian would not bother to look, in the Nile, where the boys were supposed to go, exactly where the Hebrew boys were supposed to be cast. And she put him in this basket container that was waterproof with hot tar and pitch. And it was interesting. I was researching this. The same word to use to describe the ark, a Noah's ark, this was the shockingly beautiful way that Moses' life was started as well. This basket, it's symbolic of Moses' life, like how God was present to Noah in the ark. God was present and protected Moses. When I read about Jehoshaphat, I'm blown away at her sacrificial love. And the area of my life that I find most difficult to release to God is my kids. I don't know if you can relate to that. I sometimes think that I have the best plans for them. Like I think that I could create a good path for them or guide them in such a way that would lead them to a really wonderful life. And that's just not what God wants. I wonder if like sending your child down a river sounds impossible, but God may be calling us. He is calling us to release our kids to Him. What does that look like for you today, for your children or your adult children, all of our children? As I think about releasing, so we have a 12-year-old and a 9-year-old. I think about how we sent Henry off to middle school last year. That was releasing Henry to God. I think about we're sending Arthur to sleepaway camp for the first time this summer. That's another way we're releasing our children to God. I think about one day passing the car keys to our kids. That's going to be wild. I can't imagine. I have no interest in this, but that'll be another way. I think about the future paths that they choose, maybe a college that they choose or a career that they choose or friendships that they choose. We can't control these things. Like this is all in God's hands. But it's contrary to maybe our nature, right? You hold a child in your womb, you raise them, you spend 100% of your energy caring for them, and yet we're supposed to release them to God. It feels difficult. But really, it's what I want. It's all I want. I want God's best for our children. And that's releasing them to God. So I wonder if you're walking in fear or faith today. Releasing anything to God is an act of faith, right? So for you, this might be fear of the future. This might be fear of concern about your work environment or concern about your retirement. Maybe you're living in fear or faith about your health or about relationships. Let's see what happens next in this narrative to remind us how we can live in faith. It says, Pharaoh's daughter went to the Nile to bathe, and her attendants were walking along the riverbanks, and she saw the basket among the reeds and sent her female slave to get it. She opened it and saw the baby. He was crying, and she felt sorry for him. This is one of the Hebrew babies, she said. Then his sister asked Pharaoh's daughter, shall I go and get one of the Hebrew women to nurse the baby for you? Yes, go, she answered. So the girl went and got the baby's mother. Pharaoh's daughter said to her, take this baby and nurse him for me, and I will pay you. So the women took the baby and nursed him. And then the child grew older. She took him to Pharaoh's daughter, and he became her son. She named him Moses, saying, I drew him out of the water. This is a miracle that changed the course of history. As I read scholarly perspectives on this narrative, like this was the discovery of Moses in a basket was clearly not the plan. Like that was not expected. This was the unexpected answer. And it had Moses been found, typically that they thought, oh, maybe Moses would be found by a royal, surely that would have led to death. So this is just unbelievable what happened. God had planned this so beautifully for the deliverance of Moses and the Israelites. He guided the hearts of Moses' parents. He guided the path of the Nile River. He guided the heart of Pharaoh's daughter. All of things so perfectly for his perfect plan. It should be noted, Pharaoh's daughter, I wish we had more time to go into Pharaoh's daughter and I think Moses' sister, which I think were both so brave. But Pharaoh's daughter, she didn't have a child of her own. She was the only living child of her father as well. And in order to become an heir, she would have had to have been married or to have a son. And she had, at that point, neither. She went on to raise Moses, an Israelite, in Pharaoh's house, and he had all this grand opportunity and prestige and education. It even says so in Acts, in the New Testament, chapter 7, verse 22. It says, Moses was educated in all in all the wisdom of the Egyptians and was powerful in speech and action. This is God's character. Just as we saw with Joseph, we see it again with Moses. You intended to harm me, but God intended to use it for good, to accomplish what is now being done and for the saving of many lives. I just think that's amazing what he did for Moses. The implication of Jehovah releasing Moses in the basket, it's massive. It was an incredible act of love, and it led the way to God's deliverance. It reminds me how we have no idea how one simple act of faith can change the course of history or change someone's life. It's not about releasing control for freedom. It's about changing the course of our lives, like the ripple effect. You know what I mean when you think about like ripples? So I was thinking, like, can you think of a ripple effect of faith in your life, like that's happened to you? Maybe why you're here today. I was thinking about a woman named Sue Graham, who my mom's here, so I'm gonna just keep crying. I think about how Sue Graham invited my mom to church. She took a step of faith. We're Jewish. We were going to temple, and she invited my mom to a women's Bible study, and my mom met Jesus. And then my brothers and I met Jesus, and it changed our lives forever. Like this one act of faith changed everything for us. I wonder what kind of ripple effects of faith you have in your life, or what kind of adventure God has for you. It's wild to me. Like, it's unfathomable to me to think of Jehovah releasing this child down the river. But God gave her faith, and he gave her trust to do so. Her act of letting him down the river didn't just change his life, it changed the whole Jewish nation. Because as a preview, like, think about what Moses went on to do. He freed them from slavery. He took them to the promised land. Do you think, like, if Moses' mom would have known how God would have used her or Moses, would she have, like, if she had read the end of her story before she started, which she didn't get the chance to do you think she would have put him in the basket all over again? I just think it's all so amazing. She acted out of such faith. For extra credit, go read more in the book of Exodus about how God uses Moses. It's amazing. Moses is considered one of the greatest of the prophets. He brought the law. He wrote the Pentateuch, the first 5 books of the Old Testament, the Torah. He encountered God. He led the Israelites out of Egypt into the promised land. Just an incredible life, all starting with this boy in a basket in the most horrendous of seasons. I don't want to miss out, friends. I don't know about you, but I don't want to miss out on the adventure that God has for me. I'm just blown away that he calls me his own, and that I'm happy to walk and run in that, run with confidence towards whatever he has for me. As I shared, like, I often choose the path of least resistance. I choose the safe path. I choose like what I can know or predict. But is that God's best for me? Probably not. I'd like to help us think through like how to have faith over fear today. And so there's 2 applications for us. One is to remember who God is and what he has done. And 2, it's to release the things that hold us back or down. In terms of remembering who he is and what he has done, both of those words are intentional. I often like to think about what he has done. That just feels really natural. I just like to rush to think, oh, but God's done this before and everything's going to be okay. But let's pause and remember who God is, um, because there's so much there. Like the God of the universe, almighty, all powerful, all knowing, loves you. He sees you. He sent Jesus down on the cross so that we could have a relationship with him. Like he's a relational God. Like he cares about us. Um, Knowing that, like how amazing that is, like how can I have fear? It's just amazing as we think about having God on our side. Um, I like to think about the rocks. We talk about this a lot as a family, the rocks of remembrance in our lives. And this idea comes from the story of Joshua, the Israelites crossing the Jordan River into the Promised Land. Just want to review a little bit of this with you. But in Joshua 4, Joshua calls the Israelites to each take a stone to serve as a marker of what God did. He helped the Israelites cross the Jordan River and enter the Promised Land. So let me read this verse. It says in Joshua 4, verse 7, "Tell them that the flow of the Jordan was cut off before the Ark of the Covenant of the Lord. When it crossed the Jordan, the waters of the Jordan were cut off, and these stones are to be memorial to the people of Israel forever." God was calling the Israelites to cross the Jordan into the Promised Land, but they had to take a step of faith out to see God's deliverance. Picture like the Jordan was flowing, like this was an active river, and God called them to enter in, and when they did, the river stopped, and they were then called to go to the middle of the river, what was a river, to get a stone as this mark of remembrance. They walked on dry land. These stones represent God's radical provision. And I was thinking, what are these stones in your life? What things represent God's provision for you in your life? Because when we remember God's provision and his faithfulness, we can have so much more faith. We can have faith and be love and light to the world. This concept of remembering, it makes me think of my time. I worked at Biola University for 15 years in admissions. Thank you for the woo-woo. Where's Joe DeLunas with the kids? He'd give me the thank you. Yeah, big fan. So I worked there for a long time. I worked in admissions. My job was to help meet enrollment for the undergraduate class. So I had to bring students to Biola, and I had to lead this team and motivate them to meet our admissions goals. It became an increasingly difficult task. And May 1st, which just happened, is the national admissions deadline. It's when students choose which college they're going to attend. And this was a deadline when I would find out if we met our goals or not, like if we failed or if we did okay. And it was in the spring every year, very, very stressful season. And I worked in this office. There was a tree outside my office, and it was bare. It was like really nothing to look at all year long. It was just this whatever, forgettable tree. But for literally 2 weeks out of the year, this tree is called the golden trumpet tree. It would be bare all year long, and then it would bloom for these 2 weeks, these wild yellow flowers. They're so beautiful. This is a picture of them. They're so beautiful. Like you couldn't miss it. And to me, it served as a picture of God's provision in our team. That God was reminding me, like, Michelle, I'm here. I'm here. I showed up for you last year. I showed up for your team the year before then. I will do it again. And we didn't always meet our goals. We often didn't meet our goals. God didn't always work as I expected or even wanted, but he was near, and he was faithful. He was always faithful. I had nothing to fear. And so I was so thankful for that tree. I think about it often in my life. I don't know what kind of landmarker you have in your life, but I'm sure you can think of something that you can use to remember. I also like to journal. I especially like to journal at the beginning of the year as we pray about what we want the year to look like. And then I love to reflect to see how God has worked in the past. We actually look at pictures a lot with our kids. I make a photo album at the end of the year, and the boys just love looking at the pictures. And it's a way for us to remember how God showed up in the past, and it gives us faith for the future. I think about just the hurdles that we face every day. I need to remember because I don't have the answers to solve the problems that I face every day. But when I can remember who God is and what he has done, it changes things. So yeah, we need to stop and remember how God got us through in the past, and it gives us hope and confidence for the future. Remembering what he is, who he is, and what he has done. And then secondarily, I wanted to say, what might we need to release to God? The things that are holding us back or holding us down. As we talk about living in faith and fear, I wonder how that sits with you. Is there something that might be getting in the way of, of seeking God with your whole life? Maybe it's fear or anxiety. Maybe it's safety or your idea of fun. Maybe it's prosperity or trying to fill your life with something that isn't God and it's leaving you empty. Makes me wonder what might you need to put aside in order to run the race that God has called us to. I love how the writer in Hebrews, I love when God uses his word. So Hebrews is in the New Testament, and it's bringing up Moses again. Let's look at Hebrews 11. It says, by faith, Moses' parents hid him for 3 months after he was born because they saw he was no ordinary child. They were not afraid of the king's edict. By faith, Moses, when he had grown up, he refused to be known as the son of Pharaoh's daughter. He chose to be mistreated along with the people of God rather than enjoy the fleeting pleasures of sin. He regarded disgrace for the sake of Christ as of greater value than the treasures of Egypt because he was looking ahead towards his reward. By faith, he left Egypt not fearing the king's anger. And I love how it says it here. He persevered because he saw him who is invisible. He remembered God. By faith, he kept the Passover and the application of the blood so that the destroyer of the firstborn would not touch the firstborn of Israel. And then let's jump to Hebrews chapter 12, verse 1. It says, therefore, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, let us throw off everything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles. And let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us, fixing our eyes on Jesus, the pioneer and protector of faith. Whew! The writer of Hebrews, they're reminding us, they're encouraging us, remember what God has done and remember that he'll do it again. We need to have faith and we need to release those things that are holding us back. This act of release, it's not done on our own, right? So it's important to remember that it's done through Jesus, the perfecter of our faith. It's also done through his Spirit, and it's done through the power of prayer, and it's done through community. So if this sounds daunting to you today, remember that. It's not on your own. It's not on your own power. This is an act of God in and through us. If you're anything like me, this needs to be a moment-by-moment reminder as well. So this is not a one-and-done act. This is something that we have to continually do, right? In every act, we need to release our lives to God again, asking God to remind us to have faith. Yeah, I was thinking about your lives and my life, and maybe your health has taken a downturn in this season, and maybe you want to control it, or maybe your bank account doesn't look as you wanted it to look, and maybe you're overcome with stress. Maybe you're struggling with mental illness, and it just feels so overwhelming. Come to Jesus. Remember that he is there. Seek him in prayer and seek him alongside others. If you're struggling with this concept, though, of release, I have a visual for you. It's a visual of a baby, not just for mothers, because we all were babies at some point, so we can all relate to this. This is Henry. This is Henry the week he was born. Jonathan and I look so peaceful, and there's a baby crying, right? Because that's what babies do. They cry so much. As you think about holding, if you've ever held a newborn baby, or maybe you've seen someone hold a newborn baby, they just cry and they cry and they cry, and we have all sorts of things for them, right? We have a pacifier, or we change their diaper, or we have milk, or we can swaddle them. There's all sorts of things, but they just cry, and they can't see, right? Babies can only see 8 to 12 inches away from their face when they're that little. They just can't see. They can't see the future. They can't remember the past. Oh, Mom provided for me before. She'll do it again. They don't know. They don't know. These are babies. They're wild, right? And friends, I think about this all the time because I am that baby. And I don't know about you, but I love just thinking about God as holding us like we are his children. He's saying, Michelle, I've got you. Open your eyes. I'm right here. Remember, I provided before. I've got you again. You can cry. I see that. I'll hold you again. But I'm here. Just open your eyes. I can see, right? As an adult, I'm I can see further than a foot away, and I can remember. And so God is just calling us to open our eyes, to just see him, to remember, and to rest in his arms. That's what he wants us to do. So if this feels blink, 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 get the tears out. In our times of struggle, when we're spiraling out, when we're brokenhearted or discouraged or depressed, in our highs and lows of life, we can fix our eyes on Jesus. And I love this verse of the song. It says, "Turn your eyes upon Jesus, look full in his wonderful face, and the things of earth will grow strangely dim in the light of his glory and grace." I recognize that we all come to church differently today. You may have some real highs or some real lows that you're feeling today, and I wanted to give you a moment to just rest and reflect. You have a paper on your seat, and on one side, I'd encourage you, write down something about God. Maybe it's who he is, maybe it's something he's done in your life, but let's take a moment to remember. So on that one side, remember who God is, remember what he has done, and then flip it over. Maybe there's something in your life that you need to release to him. Maybe there's something that's getting in the way of you being in a relationship with him today. Write that down on that paper. Maybe this concept of faith feels impossible to you, or just something that you long for. Know that we have a prayer team that's here that would always love to pray for you. They'll be here over to the right. So pop up for prayer if you'd like. But in the next couple of minutes, if you could write, remembering who God is and what he has done, and then release those things. Write those things down now, and then we'll go into a worship song.